What if I told you that the greatest rival of the iPhone didn't come from another smartphone company, but from a razor-sharp piece of obsidian? Sounds absurd, doesn't it? How could a piece of ancient stone possibly compare to one of the most advanced pieces of technology ever created? Well, let's find out right now. With the brilliance of millions of calculations and billions of transistors perfectly arranged within a fragile wafer, the iPhone truly stands as a masterpiece of modern technology. But on the other side of history lies another masterpiece, forged not by human hands, but by nature itself. Obsidian, a volcanic glass, born when molten lava cools so rapidly it never has time to form crystals. Depending on the trace elements, iron or magnesium, its surface may shimmer in black, deep green, or metallic blue. Millions of years ago, the earliest humans used obsidian to split open hard shells, cut wood, or craft weapons for hunting and defense. Even today in modern medicine, obsidian scalpels are used in delicate surgeries because their edges are sharper than steel. Under a microscope, even the finest steel blade looks jagged, like tiny saw teeth. But an obsidian blade, just 3 nanometers thick, remains perfectly smooth even under an electron microscope. One study found that obsidian incisions heal faster, with less inflammation and smaller scars. A true marvel of nature, a companion to humankind since the dawn of history. But the story doesn't end with its physical sharpness alone. In 1979, on the serene beach of Anakeena, Easter Island, archaeologist William Malloy's team discovered something extraordinary, an almost intact Moai eye. You know the Moai, right? Those giant statues carved from volcanic ash. Their white sclera was made of coral, and their pupils of glossy black obsidian. The islanders believed that only when the eyes were placed, the Moai would awaken, filled with mana, the sacred life force to watch over and protect the villagers. In that gaze, they saw peace, they saw guardianship, they saw spirit, and in ancient Mesoamerica, among the Maya, Aztec, and Toltec, obsidian was not just a material, it was the stone of the gods, born from the earth's fire, reflecting the darkness of the night sky. It embodied a dual nature, death and the underworld, but also wisdom, enlightenment, and spiritual power. The Aztecs forged obsidian into ritual blades so sharp they could cut a single strand of hair used in sacred ceremonies. They polished it into black mirrors, believing one could see across time and space and speak with the gods themselves. Their god Tezcatlipoca, the smoking mirror, was often depicted with an obsidian mirror for an eye, symbolizing power, knowledge, and destiny. Even today, obsidian remains a symbol of reflection and of mysterious inner energy. Indeed, obsidian has never been just a tool. It is a bridge between physics and spirit, between the material and the divine. When we look back, a shard of obsidian in the hands of an ancient human and an iPhone in yours today are not as different as they seem. Both are born from curiosity, the desire to shape matter, and humanity's timeless urge to create something beyond nature. Though separated by millions of years, the obsidian blade and the iPhone stand as two bright points on the same curve of evolution. One, born of volcanoes and time. The other, from silicon and artificial intelligence. Yet both, in their own way, tell the same story, the eternal dream of humankind, to turn matter into mind and to make the world. a reflection of ourselves. But was obsidian truly the first material ever discovered by humankind? When did we begin crafting tools from stone? And how did those primitive creations shape our lives and our evolution? Let's continue our journey. Let's turn back time, 3.3 million years ago. In the vast lands of what is now Lomekwi, Kenya, amid the sunburned plains and golden grass, a small creature bends over the carcass of an antelope. It doesn't understand what death is. It only knows the smell, raw, heavy, and tempting. But something unusual happens. Its eyes, instead of fixing on the meat, pause on a rock beside it. It reaches out, feeling the coldness, the weight, the rough surface. Its hand trembles, then crack. A shard breaks loose, sharp and shining in the light. And though that creature doesn't know it yet, that single strike has just opened the first technological era on Earth. From those shattered fragments, the Lomekwian culture was born, the earliest known stone tool tradition in human history. These primitive tools were used to break bones, extract marrow, and crush seeds. It sounds simple, even crude, but in that sharp crack, a spark flared to life, the spark of creative thinking. The Lomekwian tools were not beautiful, not polished or symmetrical. They were nothing more than broken stones, created by random strikes. But sometimes, randomness is the beginning of awareness, because when that hand struck again and again and watched the fragments change shape, something entirely new appeared on Earth, the idea of cause and effect. It was, in essence, the first scientific experiment on this planet, not spoken in words, not written in formulas, but guided by instinct and curiosity. For the first time, a living creature deliberately altered the material world to serve its own survival. That single strike didn't just change the fate of a species, it changed the way life looked at itself. From that moment on, nature was no longer untouchable, no longer a closed system. Humans, or rather the ancestors of humans, had discovered how to intervene in nature's order. The rock, once a symbol of stillness, became a tool, a symbol of action. And as the hand began to master the stone, the brain began to transform. Scientists call it a feedback loop, the cycle between hand and brain. As the hand learned to grasp, to strike, to adjust, the brain was forced to process more complex information. And as the brain grew more capable, the hand performed even finer movements. A self-reinforcing loop had begun. And from that motion of the hand, intelligence was born. Pause for a moment and imagine this. For millions of years before, no creature on Earth had ever thought that it could make something new. Everything came from nature, and everything returned to it. But now, a small creature had broken that rule. It became the first being to restructure matter. That humble moment, so simple that no one could have noticed, was the birth of technology. Not fire, not the wheel, not metal, but a stone struck with the will to create something different. From that instant, Earth was no longer just a biological world. It had entered the age of engineering, an era where intelligence began shaping evolution itself. Fascinating, isn't it? Those tiny shards of rock, looking like something a child might pick up by a riverbank, were witnesses to the explosion of consciousness. Thanks to them, our ancestors could eat more, live longer, and travel farther. But more importantly, their brains began to grow. The energy from bone marrow and raw meat, unlocked by these tools, became the fuel for a biological revolution. From 400 grams to 600, then 800, the brain swelled, its neural web thickening and intertwining, thought, memory, the first flicker of language, all born from the fat within the marrow harvested by stone. In other words, tools didn't just help humans survive, they helped create humans. Without those Lomekwian shards, our minds today might still resemble the apes, clever but not creative. So when you hold a smartphone or watch a robotic arm move, remember this: they are all descendants of that first strike. Technology, at its core, is not the product of the digital age. It is the oldest instinct of our species, the urge to understand and reshape the world. The first blow of Lomekwian stone was humanity's first declaration: I am no longer passive. I can change the shape of things, and through that, change myself. From that moment on, life on Earth turned a new page, a chapter where evolution was no longer written by nature alone, but co-authored by consciousness. Every shattered fragment was a question to the universe. Can I do it better? Can I create something new? And those questions never stopped. Looking back now, it's astonishing. A simple stone fragment holds the entire history of human awareness. In that echoing crack of Lomekwi, we can still hear the reverberation of every invention to come, from the bronze axe, to the wheel, to the steam engine, to the silicon chip. Every invention, just another way of striking the same ancient stone, the stone of limitation. And perhaps that is the deepest essence of technology, not to replace nature, but to speak with it. That first strike was not an act of defiance, but a whisper, a soft voice saying, I want to understand you. I want to touch your mystery. From the crack of stone in Lomekwi to the click of keyboards today, the rhythm continues, the fingerprints of humanity etched into the history of Earth. If there was ever a moment that marked the birth of intelligence on this planet, it wasn't when we learned to speak, to paint, or to dream of the stars. It was when a hand touched a stone and made it different. From that instant on, Earth was no longer a planet that merely lived, but a planet that creates. The wheel of time turns back to 2.5 million years ago in the lands of Middle Awash, Ethiopia. Under the blazing sun, the red earth cracks open and a new silhouette appears. Homo habilis, the skillful human. That name wasn't their own. It was the title we gave them, because in their hands, the world began to take on its first geometric meaning. If the ancestors at Lomekwi struck stones by instinct, then Homo habilis struck with intention. They chose the right kind of rock, felt its weight, studied its structure, searched for the perfect angle of fracture. Each strike was no longer random. It was the first calculation in history, not of numbers, but of shape. If I strike here, how will it break? If I want a sharper edge, how should I change my wrist? And in that moment, logic was born. Picture this. On the banks of the ancient Awash River, a Homo habilis kneels beside a round cobble. Around them, fragments of failed attempts. Sunlight spills across their hands, hands that cradle, measure, and strike again. Once, twice, then a third time, slightly different, until a small triangular flake falls into their palm, fitting perfectly against the thumb. And they smile, not with instinct, but with understanding. In that instant, they weren't just making a tool. They were making the idea of a tool. Archaeologists call this the Oldowan culture, the first technology with a sense of design. These weren't random shards anymore, but products of intent. The stones were carefully chosen: basalt, rhyolite, quartzite, hard, heavy, predictable when struck. Each blow was meant to create flakes, thin, razor-sharp slivers of stone. Look closely at an Oldowan tool, and you'll see the rough draft of human knowledge, crude yet logical. A flat face, a cutting edge, a grip, balanced by sight, touch, and the silent geometry of evolution. And in that process, the brain of Homo habilis began to change. They learned to see before acting, something no creature had done before. When they looked at a stone, they no longer saw a rock, but a potential object. That was the foundation of intelligence itself. The world can be changed if we understand how it works. From the instinctive strike at Lomekwian to the deliberate strike at Oldowan, less than 1,000,000 years apart, yet in that gap, consciousness leaped forward by millennia. Have you ever wondered what truly separates a chimp using a twig to fish termites from a Homo habilis shaping a stone to cut meat? Both use tools, but only one knows they are making one. The chimp picks a stick, uses it, and tosses it away. But Homo habilis chooses the stone, tests, fails, learns, and remembers. Tools were no longer just instruments of survival. They became the vessels of knowledge. They taught each other how to strike, how to hold, how to listen for that perfect crack. And in that rhythm echoed the first heartbeat of language. Perhaps when they pointed and uttered sounds, "Oh, kata," to signal where to hit, the seeds of speech were sown. Because to cooperate, they had to communicate, and to communicate, they had to think. Oldowan wasn't just about stones. It was the dawn of abstraction. To shape a tool, one had to imagine the result first. That's the foundation of creativity itself. Strange, isn't it, that a simple act, striking a rock, carried within it the entire principle of science: observation, hypothesis, experiment, result. If it failed, they struck again. If it worked, they remembered. Their world was the earliest laboratory: no chalkboards, no formulas, just hands, patience, and the echo of stone. As Oldowan tools spread across Africa, knowledge began to travel too. Skill became culture. Wherever there was the sound of stone against stone, there was community. One strikes, others watch. Children learn by observing. A flake falls, and voices cheer. That was the first classroom in human history. From Oldowan came cooperation. From cooperation came language. And from language, civilization. Those lifeless stones, in the hands of Homo habilis, became extensions of the human mind. Not just tools of survival, but tools of thought. Every strike trained focus, memory, prediction, reflection, the very roots of logic and creativity. In every fracture lies a primitive idea. In every sharp edge, a geometric vision. In every stone, the first sketch of human intellect. And from those stones, the age of technical thinking was born. When you plan, when you design, when you write, you are doing what Homo habilis began 2.5 million years ago, turning chaos into order. Since then, countless civilizations have risen and fallen, but the same principle remains. Every invention, every piece of technology begins with one simple question: what will happen if I do this? That question first echoed in the sound of stone striking stone in Ethiopia. And from that moment on, the human mind never stopped evolving. In 2023, a report published in Nature revealed something extraordinary. A team of researchers discovered an ancient tool-making workshop at Melka Kunture in the upper reaches of the Awash Valley, Ethiopia. Nearly 600 artifacts, dating back about 1.2 million years, were found there, most of them shaped like hand axes, and almost all made from obsidian. This discovery suggests something profound. Our ancestors weren't just reacting to nature. They were already organizing, planning, and developing new skills long before history even began. Have you ever wondered, when did human society truly begin? It wasn't when we built cities. It wasn't when we spoke the first words. It began when one person learned how to shape a stone and another stopped to watch. The real miracle lay in that second person's eyes, the observer, the imitator, and in that instant, knowledge was passed on. That was the true birth of society. Stone tools didn't just help us survive, they forced us to cooperate. To make a single blade, someone had to find the right stone, someone had to strike, someone had to sharpen, and someone had to test it. Small groups began to share the work. Hunters, tool makers, firekeepers, child watchers, and from that, the division of labor was born. See how simple it sounds? Yet in that quiet moment, the foundation of social organization was laid, not through law or power, but through trust and the shared need to survive. The skilled tool makers were respected. They were the first engineers of humankind. Their knowledge passed not through writing, but through eyes, through hands, through the rhythm of every strike. From there, the first technological specialists emerged, those who understood materials, angles, and precision. They knew that with the right strike, a perfect tool could be born. It was a small step, but it marked humanity's first social revolution, the moment when people began to cooperate and share knowledge. As tools grew more complex, something even greater happened. Knowledge became communal. The skilled were respected, imitated, and learned from. They didn't just create tools, they created teachers. And with that, the act of teaching and learning, the foundation of all civilization, was born. Look at our world today: engineers, doctors, teachers, scientists, each with their own role. What you see is the grand continuation of something that began millions of years ago. That first tool, and the way humans learned to create it together, sparked the flames of culture, cooperation, and collective knowledge. Because in the end, humanity never evolved alone. We evolved because we learned how to build something greater than ourselves: a society, a civilization, a story that never truly ends. If we look back across those millions of years, we realize a stone tool was never just a stone. It was a mirror reflecting a growing mind. Each strike didn't just make a fragment. It created the very idea of change, the belief that nature could bend, even for a moment, to the will of human hands. From that, something subtle awakened in our brains. Humans stopped living only in the present. When they held a stone, they began to think ahead about the animal to be hunted, the roots to be dug, the meal yet to come. That ability to imagine an outcome before acting was the dawn of abstract thought. And with it came a new concept: meaning. The stone was no longer a stone. It had become a tool, a symbol of knowledge, of mastery. But maybe the most miraculous part wasn't in the stones themselves. It was in the way humans made them together. No one person could invent, teach, and preserve that skill alone. Which means, alongside the first tools, A new kind of social intelligence was born, one built on trust, sharing, and teaching. Those fragments of rock were, in a sense, our first language, the language of hands, of observation, of shared action. From that point on, human intelligence didn't just evolve inside the brain, it evolved between people. We didn't evolve through genes alone, but through knowledge passed from one generation to the next. Each time a child learned to shape stone, they were learning how to learn. And that was humanity's greatest leap. Looking back, it's almost unbelievable that everything, from the wheel to the satellite, began with a single instinctive strike by an ancient river. But perhaps what made stone tools the true milestone of civilization wasn't just that they helped us survive, it's that they helped us realize we could create the future. That moment marked the beginning of everything, of technology, of innovation, of ambition. Because the instant humans learned to turn a stone into a tool, they planted the first seed of power, the power to turn knowledge into strength. But soon, survival wasn't enough. Humans wanted more. And when the first stone shattered, that moment didn't just begin the age of tools or technology, it began the age of power and dominance. Those stones would no longer be used only for hunting or crafting. They would become weapons. And from that point on, the story of human intelligence entered a whole new chapter. From that very moment, humanity stepped onto a path no other species had ever taken, the path of turning matter into power. Hidden within every strike of stone was a quiet desire, the desire to control the prey, to control nature, and eventually to control one another. When Homo erectus learned to sharpen stone into a point, a tool became a weapon. A thin, invisible line was drawn from hunting to defending and then to attacking. And in that moment, organized violence was born, along with social awareness. Because to fight, they had to cooperate. And to cooperate, they had to communicate. Paradoxically, in learning to protect themselves, humans also learned to understand each other. Centuries turned to millennia. Stone became copper. Copper became iron. Fire was tamed, then imprisoned in the forge. And from that fire, humanity learned something new, that heat could change the nature of matter itself. From the bronze axes of Sumer, the iron swords of Rome, to bows, chariots, and cannons, every invention was not just a leap in technology, but a leap in consciousness. The deeper we understood the world, the more power we gained to reshape it. But then, the old question returned. Did we create the tool, or has the tool been shaping us all along? In the Middle Ages, a single arrow could change the fate of a king. By the 19th century, one bullet could redraw the map of the world. And in the 20th century, when a single atom split in two, the entire planet trembled. The deserts of New Mexico. Once again, humanity recreated that first strike from Kenya, but this time on a global scale. A group of scientists stood before a blinding white flash, the first nuclear explosion in history. Its code name was Trinity. It wasn't just the explosion of matter, but of intellect, of pride, and of fear. J. Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb, watched that light and whispered words from the Bhagavad Gita. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. From the first stone tool to the Trinity test, only one thread connects them: intelligence. But intelligence itself carries no morality. It simply amplifies what already exists within us: curiosity, creativity, and ambition. Some call the atomic bomb the pinnacle of science. Others call it humanity's greatest failure, the moment when knowledge stopped being light and became a blade hanging over the very civilization that forged it. Stone tools helped us survive. Nuclear weapons could wipe us out. Between those two extremes lies the entire story of humankind, a never-ending arc between creation and destruction, between hope and fear. Look close enough, and you'll see. From the primal strike of stone to the blinking lights of a control room, humans have always been doing the same thing, testing the limits of themselves. We can't stop creating, and we can't stop asking, have we gone too far? Today, in an age of artificial intelligence and autonomous weapons, that question echoes louder than ever. When machines can think, when nuclear energy can either feed the planet or erase it in a flash, we find ourselves right back where it all began, wondering if human intelligence has grown beyond the hands that shaped it. Perhaps what truly defines us isn't the tools we make, but our ability to stop and reflect on what we've made. Because if the first stone was a symbol of creation, then the atomic bomb is a mirror, forcing us to face ourselves. From that instinctive strike beside a Kenyan river to the blinding flash of Trinity, more than 3 million years have passed. And in that time, humanity has not only learned to survive, but to create, like the gods themselves. Yet, with that power comes a burden, responsibility. If the first tool lifted us above nature, then the nuclear weapon reminds us one wrong step, and we could fall from the very civilization we've built. So maybe the greatest question is no longer, what can we create? But rather, how long can we keep our humanity before our own intelligence outpaces our heart? From the first stone struck beside a Kenyan river to the most advanced technologies of today, the stone tool did more than mark an age. It shaped how we understand the world itself through creation, experimentation, and refinement. That same spirit carried us from rough shards of rock to the modern lives we know now. But with light comes shadow. From tools of the hunt, we forged weapons of war. From the urge to master nature grew the ambition to master one another. Every leap in technology brought with it a moral test. Can the hands that create also restrain themselves? Those ancient stones once saved humanity from hunger. Today's stones, uranium, silicon, can either save or destroy our entire world. And yet, within every modern creation still lives the echo of our ancient ancestors. Every surgical blade, every robotic arm, every machine learning algorithm, they are all descendants of those trembling hands that once held the first stone. The nameless engineers of the past, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Neanderthals, they could never have imagined that one day their children would walk on the moon or speak with artificial intelligence. But it was they who lit the first spark, the flame of curiosity, patience, and creation. Today, in our world of circuits and data, if you listen closely enough, you can still hear that ancient sound, stone striking stone. It reminds us that every great achievement begins the same way, with observation, with trial, with the courage to learn, and that our greatest duty is not merely to create more, but to understand why we create. Will the humans of the future still craft tools to serve themselves or to replace themselves? Will we learn to use our intelligence not just to conquer, but to preserve? Those questions still hang in the air, like an echo from that ancient stone still reverberating, never truly fading away.